say you don't?
No.
He's not.
Tony's not
He's
gonna
on
be
the airplane right now.
here. Oh, okay,
He left the sun.
okay. You might be pretty quick here. You want us to bump you down a spot?
Yeah, because he gets off at 7, he's coming straight here. So
Where's he
probably
work at?
About 10 after. Loads.
Oh, okay.
So about 10 after.
Depends on how long Kevin talks.
Let me stretch it out.
Stretch it out.
No, I told you the plan. Nice night out there, everyone wants to go.
It's one of those, if you don't hit the window at the beginning there, then it might be a little longer on that section, so.
You have somewhere to be tonight. Oh, we actually was having.
Probably want to do it before my report.
It'll be all right.
All right. Ready to go? All right, good evening. It's 7 o'clock on Thursday, July 14th. This is a meeting of the Bellbrook Board of Education in public for the purpose of conducting the school district's business. It's not to be construed as a public community meeting, and there is a time for public participation during the meeting as indicated in the agenda. Mr. Liming, would you please call the roll?
Mr. Carpenter,
Here.
Mrs. Dorn, Mr. Kinsey, present. Mr. Price is absent, and Mrs. Anderson.
Here.
All right, please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Mr. Lyman, can you please give the treasurer's report?
Can I get a motion to approve the minutes from the June 30th meeting?
So moved.
Mrs. Dorn,
Second.
Mrs. Anderson. Any questions or comments, corrections? All right, please call the roll.
Mr. Carpenter,
Yes.
Mrs. Dorn,
Yes.
Mr. Kinsey,
Yes.
Mrs. Anderson.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Can I get a motion to approve the treasurer's report for the month of June? So moved.
Mr. Kinsey,
Second.
Mrs. Dorn.
A couple things to point out. I believe the financial reports are on the website, or they're going. Okay, they are on. Good. The reports that you have before you are the fiscal year-end reports.
Mhm.
June 30th is the end of the district fiscal year, and some highlights. If you look at the first blue sheet, State Foundation is our main source of state funding, and we only received 94% of what I estimated we would receive a year ago. Basically, that's because the ADM, average daily membership in the district, and the property values in the district went in opposite directions from what we thought they would, and it tricked us, without getting into details, from the guarantee to the formula in state funding, where we are now based again on the number of kids that we have rather than a flat amount that we received 2 years ago. The guarantee was going to get us about $400,000 more than we got with the foundation formula. But we're right on that borderline where we go back and forth. So we'll see what happens in fiscal year 23.
Okay.
The other thing under expenditures, two things. One, we hit the salaries right on the button. That could never happen again. I'll never be that close. With the retirement and benefits, we only spent 81% of what I had budgeted. Being conservative, I did not budget for the amount of the savings we got from the switch in medical insurance plans, and also there were some cuts in personnel, so that the retirement that the board pays was less than was budgeted a year before. So that was lower. That's a good thing. No expenditures lower than budgeted. Purchase services was much higher than budgeted due to increase in fuel prices, different repairs that we had, legal expenses, any service that any company provides for the district. Basically, that's a catch-all for anything that's not a supply or material or piece of equipment that we buy, and is not a salary or benefit. So it's a service the vendor provides for us. That is the summary for that one report, and the other one I wanted to look at is the third page, or I guess the you have the front and back of the first page. This is the front of the next page, where it looks a lot like the one we just viewed, only these percentages are a percentage of the total budget, not a percentage of the line item. And you can tell if you add state foundation, the second row, with the third row, state and federal assistance. If you look over at the percentages, 18 plus 9 is 27%, and that's during the entire campaign for the levy. 27% was what the state funding has been, and it's still 27% at the end of this fiscal year. So in this district, 73% of our funding comes from local sources, 27% is from state, maybe 1% of that 27 is federal funding for general fund. So as I've said many times before, most districts are 50-50 on their state and local funding. We're 27 state funding, 73 local, because of the way the state funds school districts. And then expenditures, salaries, wages, and benefits. As long as you're below 80%, I've always heard that's good. We're at 76, so that's really good that we are able to spend a larger portion of our budget on other items for supplies, materials, and things like that. Any questions about any of this? I have the pie charts included. I have the page that shows how we balanced out, and I have balances in the general fund for many years.
Mr. Lemming, how often do we flip between the foundation and the formula? I mean, is that like a daily flip or
No.
like a quarterly?
So I've been here like 20 years, and we changed one time about 7 years in, so nothing for the first 7 years I was here, and then there was no change until about 2 years ago. So over that period of time, hardly any change, but now we're right on that cusp. So I think that they can, I think every month that they recalculate this, they can change it, but I think we only changed twice this last year, and it has to do with any updates in our kid count and any update in our property values. So it's really strange to be right on that edge where so now we're funded according to how many kids we have, and so if you don't want to have a very high valuation per pupil. So if your number of kids go down and your property value goes up, then you normally get less funding from the state. You know, higher valuation per pupil, and they determine that to mean that your community is more able to support the education rather than the state doing it. Right. So it's about like income tax kind of thing. So that's all I have.
I have a question. If you don't mind, back to the first page.
Yes.
Spending considerably less than what we budgeted on the employee benefits. That's a good thing. I know we keep saying, we said a few times, like projected, whatever it was, 4.3 million over 5 years, and that. Seeing this, does that help kind of solidify that projection's actually going to be pretty close? Or?
Yeah, I think so. Now, what is not included in here in that savings? I should have mentioned this. That might be a really good reason why purchase services, in fact, it is a good reason why purchase services is high, is because the buy-in that we had into the insurance program came out of the purchase services account. They told us that the payment made to the medical insurance company to join the program is not a benefit, so it couldn't come out of the benefits line. It had to come out of purchase services, and so that was a $800-some-thousand that came out of purchase services rather than benefits. So the about 1.3 million savings there on benefits for the first year only would involve that buy-in also that didn't come out of that line item. So, but my thought was that we weren't going to in the first year save really anything with the buy-in, and that would come in the next years to come. So,
Thank you.
better than expected.
All right, any other questions, comments? All right, thank you, Mr. Kinsey. Mr. Lemming, please call the roll.
Mrs. Dorn,
Yes.
Mr. Kinsey,
Yes.
Mrs. Anderson,
Yes.
Mr. Carpenter.
Yes, motion passes. Any board members have correspondence that they want to share? with the other board members this evening? I'm not aware of any. All right, so we'll go on to good news recognition. Yeah, put that there and I'll. We have recognition for Isaac Layfield, the 2022 OHSAA State Track Qualifier Pole Vault, 6th place. Congratulations. And then for Tony Giovanni, who's not here this evening, but 2022 OHSAA State Track Qualifier for the pole vault in 10th place. So, excellent for Tony as well as Isaac. All right, so going on to reports to the board, Dr. Kozat has an update for us on school safety.
All right, I know school safety always on our mind, but more so probably in the last few months here. So thought it would be good to give an update to the board and to the community out there of all the things that we are currently doing in regards to school safety. It's just not like something we obviously just started doing a month or two ago. These are things that have been going on for years and continue to hone and to tweak and refine as time goes on. So, so we have a few slides here. So currently conducting a comprehensive review of safety and security within the school district. So all the things that we are doing, we're taking a look at those and again, seeing if there's any gaps or anything that we need to continue to look at and to fill. But we are taking a look at those things through our safety committee and also through kind of an ad hoc safety committee that kind of brought up a little bit just in response to some things that are going on lately to conduct this comprehensive review and continue to do so. So just give some updates. Building safety plans, so these are required by the state. So every 3 years, the buildings update their safety plans. And these are, 60, 70, 80 pages, 80 plus pages. And Mrs. Sigmund spearheads a lot of this. So 80 plus pages, get signed off at the appropriate police and fire departments, then reviewed and approved by the whole Ohio School Safety Center. Again, that's required of all school districts in the state of Ohio. Safety meetings, we have twice a year with our school safety committee and administrative team. We all meet together with our local police and fire departments and have discussions about safety concerns and any ideas or thoughts. And again, this can go anything from, maybe intruder school safety to like the school safety zones out in front of the school district. So anything that has to do with student safety, not just kind of maybe what we think of as worst case scenarios, but things like that also. County-wide response to active shooter and active threat situations. So Greene County meets with all of the police departments, fire departments. So it's kind of just a bigger group of our school safety committee, representative from all those committees, and usually Mrs. Sigmund's at those meetings, meet twice a year to discuss, to see what other school districts or entities are doing, and if there's something good going on there, stealing what they're doing or their thoughts. ALICE training. ALICE stands for Alert, Lockdown, Inform, Counter, and Evacuate. So all staff is trained on this. We also have three staff members who are certified trainers. All 6 to 12 students watch a video on ALICE, and then elementary classrooms kind of have an age-appropriate storybook about this situation, about ALICE. And then all schools do periodic, at least one drill per year, training, discussion, preparation for active shooter situations. So it could be a kind of a tabletop discussion of what if this happens, what if that happens, what are we going to do to kind of mentally prepare for some of those things as a staff.
So thanks, to be clear, those drills are not with students present.
No, sometimes they are with students present.
In the older buildings, or even in the younger buildings?
Even in the younger buildings, again, it can be almost like a fire drill where we're going to go outside. There's something not good going on. We're going to go outside, and again, details are left age appropriate kind of situation. The next slide here, counselors and mental health counselors. We're lucky enough to have at least one full-time counselor in each of our buildings. We have one at BCI and Stephen Bell, 2 at the middle school, and 3 at the high school. I know some other districts that don't have a full-time counselor, especially at their elementary buildings. And then also we have a district mental health counselor. So again, try to be preventative. Again, as it says on the top, of preventative measures of trying to catch those situations, catch those tough things going on with kids or so forth, or concerns from parents, concerns from teachers. And again, those things run through the counselors, and if they need some extra help, or maybe it's above kind of where they're at, they either give that to our district mental health counselor, or, as we're talking with the parents, a private counseling also, and if that situation warrants that. Threat assessment team. So each building has a trained threat assessment team that analyzes threatening behaviors and/or situations at schools. So, if a student says something or does something, this team, gets together and kind of assesses the seriousness of the situation and can go forth and do what needs to be. Again, something that somebody says can be taken a few different ways, and we want to treat in a situation appropriately, whether it's something maybe was said out of context and it really not mean what it means, as kids sometimes say some things that they really don't mean what they say, and they check into that situation and it is just that, it's not anything else. So that team really gets together and assesses those, analyzes those threatening behaviors or situations. Crisis Prevention Institute. So this is actually a company, a program. So it's short for, or CPI is short for Crisis Prevention Institute. So many staff members, I would say probably 75 to 100 or somewhere in that range, administrators, bus drivers are trained annually on CPI. And really this is anywhere from trying to de-escalate a situation verbally with a student. Again, this could be typical students or students with special needs, the whole gamut, or any situation, trying to de-escalate that situation verbally before any type of physical interaction would go on. And again, it's training to how to appropriately hold those students or how to appropriately deal with those students. And so this is a 4 to 6 hour training, 7 hours initially, and then it's 3 or 4 hours every year. So, again, these we have two certified trainers in the district that put this on for us and teach our staff members about this. Hope Squad. Hope Squad's mission is to prevent suicide through public awareness and education, reduce stigma, and serve as a resource for those touched by suicide. So this is starting out at the middle school here. So again, trying to be proactive, preventive measures, kind of a peer situation here. Sometimes the peers, probably most of the times, peers know really what's going on in the school or in the community, and them allowing them to kind of see what those signs are, and then obviously reporting those signs to the appropriate people, and being just an extra layer of support for our students. And next there. Stop the Bleed training. This is training that prepares participants to ability as a staff to recognize life-threatening bleeding and intervene effectively. All staff was trained with Stop the Bleed in 2020, and we're getting trained again this school year. So in a situation where a student is bleeding, again, this could be anything from a playground accident to something much worse than that, and you're not able to get EMT care or proper medical care, of how can I use a belt, use a shirt to kind of stop the bleed. And so those are training that actually Premier Health did for us 2 years ago and will do for us again. These are all kind of layered things that each one by themselves might not sufficiently layer all those on top of each other. it comes out really well. Handle with care. Essentially, this is communication in situations with our police or community, the township or the city. There's something that maybe happened at a student's house the night before. Maybe it was a domestic violence. Maybe it was something else that happened. They let us know, the police let us know about that at an appropriate level of confidentiality so that we can be aware that, hey, this student may not be quite acting correctly or nicely or appropriately the next day. They might be sleeping. They might be not want to talk. And so that our counselors, our administrators, our appropriate staff are aware of that so we can handle that situation with care and not try to, press that student where they had something really bad go on the night before at their house. Tip line. This is a crisis line, Ohio School Safety Center tip line with Homeland Security with Ohio. And again, this anonymous tip line that anybody can call, and it's dealt with seriously and quickly and appropriately, and the police get involved real fast. I've been involved real fast when the situation warranted of something that, maybe it's a social media threat, maybe it's something else that is going on. Again, the people, community members, students, people in the community sometimes know things or see things a lot quicker than we do. So that's another layer to the piece.
Can I ask a question about that one?
Sure.
I'm absolutely not going to put you on the spot here, but maybe in the future, I'd like to hear kind of how often that's used or how often we get a heads up from that. Just something, maybe jot something down for later.
Yeah, and again, off the top of my head, it's maybe once,
3 calls this year, they were all suicide based.
3 a year.
We had 3 this year.
Is that pretty typical?
somewhere in that range.
Our kids typically go to counselors, but that isn't available. Those were mainly after hours, no worry about suicide.
Yeah, and something that kind of goes along with that, Securely is a piece of software that we have that monitors students' internet searches and keystrokes on district accounts and devices. So, if a student is saying something suicidal, something inappropriate, Securely, that company is really quick on getting to an administrator, getting to Matt's on all those also. And or the police, or if it's something in the middle of the night, they can call the police. I remember getting one this year right before Green County Career Center graduation in the parking lot. I got a phone call, and it was already being dealt with at that situation. So that's just another layer of safety there. So anytime a school or anytime a student is on a district account, we're monitoring that and what they're saying, what they're doing. There's also a parent app that can help monitor that also, or monitor what your child is searching on the internet. Again, it doesn't always have to be inappropriate. Maybe they're really off task. Maybe they're on the Cool Math website a little bit too much, playing games or something. So ESPN or something. Again, so as a parent, it doesn't necessarily have to be bad sites. It just is a little off task, maybe.
Topic for conversation.
Tell me a little bit about that. Next page here. Background checks. So all school employees have BCI FBI background checks. Visitor management system is being implemented for next school year to screen visitors during school hours. So they'll be screened upon entering this school during school hours. And then volunteers, all volunteers are required to get background checks. So the visitor management system will be new next school year, and we are hoping that will be ready to go by the first day of school. We're hoping that will be ready to go.
Can you explain a little bit more for people who aren't familiar with that? That it's not just a system like a policy, it's an electronic system.
Yep. So we screen via a driver's license anybody that's going to be in our school. Let's say they're going to be a guest speaker or something, or they're going to eat lunch with their kid. We're going to swipe that card and screen them via that. Any type of alert that we have on the school district, maybe that parent can't be with that child, or something like that. And then they print out a badge, and that way we know that they've been they've gone through the appropriate process through the main office.
So I'm kind of in this area, near real-time background check. That's really.
That's
Yeah.
great,
That's
yeah.
really good. Because maybe somebody did the bib system, I forget the expiration, 2 years, 3 years, what 3 years, a year and a half ago something happened, but we wouldn't know it. Now it's every single time you walk in the door, you swipe your driver's license. A real-time background check, that's excellent.
And can parents provide input to, like, let's say they have some type of protective order?
Yep.
That's something they can add?
Yep, so that'd be a customized alert within the school district. We would be able to put that on there.
Okay,
Yep, definitely. We have that if we have that paperwork, we'd be able to add that.
okay.
Interior school doors can be quickly shut, locked, and secured. Outside school doors are locked once the school day starts, and all funneled through the main office area. Our current access control systems, our locks are being updated. Just meeting today about it. They're in the process of being updated. We already have some, but they're being updated with our new system.
Is that including the door sensors? Is that also that some doors will have sensors, so if they're propped open or something, you get an alert?
Those doors, correct. Yes. Yep. That goes along with the camera system. So each building right now is interior and exterior cameras, but they're being updated right now. So the system the board approved, or the board approved at the last meeting, we're updating the camera system, updating those access control systems for outside doors, and then the visitor management system. We're working on those as soon as we can. Again, we just met today with about the outside school doors. So we're going to be working on those. There's going to be some changes in visitors, obviously the visitor management system, and also checking out students. We're going to K-8 have parents running their driver's license to check out students also, so that that alert comes up. So it's going to be some changes. We'll come out with more information about that as we get a little closer to school. But there are going to be some tweaks and changes. Again, all in the effort of trying to keep everybody safe. So might take a little bit more time to check out your child, a few more seconds. But again, just trying to be as safe as possible. We just updated our radios. So our radios, all administrators have radios that have a secure channel for communication during an emergency. We don't have to rely on cell phones, because it's been known in the past where if there's an extreme emergency, everybody's trying to use cell phones, everything gets jammed and no one can talk. So we can talk very quickly within the school district during an emergency situation. 3M film, we discussed this at either the last meeting or the meeting before, installed on windows to slow down entry into our buildings. And then school resource officer, so we currently have an SRO with Sugarcreek Township, primarily housed at the high school. We also have contracts with Bellbrook Police Department to have an on-site presence during part of the days at our elementary schools. Come back to that in a second here, but it's also to do the last one here. State school safety grant. We applied for a great safety grant when they did the $5 million. We were trying to get funded for those cameras we actually just bought, but we were denied that. House Bill 110 had $100 million allocated to safety in schools. That information is probably not going to come out until August or September. Those details or the funding applications and so forth, it looks like, though, probably pretty similar to the last round of safety grant of the application process and so forth. So obviously, once that comes open, we will be applying for that and see what we can get out of that. I don't know any details of how they're going to allocate those funds, whether it's based on, minimum per school district, or if it's a competitive grant, or if it's based on our 27%. A lot of times they base that on our 27%, and so sometimes we are really far down the list because of that 27%. But I don't have any details of how they're going to do that. I think they funded about 95 schools at the last school safety grant. There's 650 school districts in Ohio, and they didn't fully fund, I don't believe, all those grants either. So, but once it opens, obviously we'll take a really close look at it, and I would see us applying for that. Any questions before we talk about school resource officer? Questions on the other stuff?
So this last page that we're looking at, that's that's all part of the comprehensive review that you were talking about early on in the presentation, right?
Yep, and really that's probably the main thrust of it, but we're looking at the other things, just making sure that there's other things that we can do, or if there's a gap somewhere or whatever else. But as you can see, these things there's a lot of layers to them. It's 3 pages here of stuff that we were already doing. It's like we just started doing this stuff last month or 2 months ago. It's been years in the process. But again, continue our focus on it, and continue to stay, like I say, focused on it. And if there's a way that we can upgrade some things, kudos to the board at last meeting to be able to upgrade our doors, our cameras, and our visitor management system. I know there's a cost to that. However, a lot of those cameras, like in this building, original to this building, 2006. So we all know how quickly technology changes with phones and whatever else. Every 2 years or whatever, it's technology from 16 years ago. So be able to update that and quickly be able to get that information to those appropriate authorities too is really an asset to this new system. Them being able to, it's not a very good system if the people, the authorities, can't access it and look at it in real time. So it's also a benefit. School resource officers. So just want to throw out a thought, a discussion of, and trying to get feedback from the board of, is there interest in providing more support with a school resource officer or the like at some of our other schools?
I definitely would like to see that. I mean, people have concerns and issues, not just at the high school on a day-in, day-out basis. So it's, threats and concerns and the need for, I think, a resource officer should be, I would see the presence at every building being appropriate. Whether they're all from our local police departments or not, I think that's a reasonable question. But certainly, folks who are well-trained, fit, able to really provide security and not just, I don't mean lip service, but I mean just, a warm body isn't what we really need. We need somebody who can really respond if needed.
I agree. I'd love to pursue the idea, peruse the idea. Unfortunately, there's realistic things we need to talk about, like cost.
Sure.
I'd be curious to hear however we end up. I know we had some discussions with like our chiefs of police, there's that. But if there's other companies out there that provide a service like this, I'd be interested in looking at that. I'd be curious to hear what kind of training they have, how often they update it.
Mm-hmm.
So there's some real world stuff to consider. But if we can do it, if it makes sense for the district, and if it's something the community wants, I think we need to strongly consider it. I very much like the idea of having a comprehensive plan in this area.
Yep.
Mass casualty events are such a unique problem that if you're heavy just in one area and shallow in another, that's to the detriment of everybody. So I'd love to hear more if there's options out there and if we can do it.
Mm-hmm.
I think any option that reduces the amount of time in the event of worst of worst, it's about time, right? It's about how quickly
We can
a
respond.
responder respond.
Yep.
So looking looking at what options are available to us, the entire gamut of what options are available to decrease response time. I'm open to the entire discussion.
I think especially having somebody present in the building all the time, like a resource officer or a security officer, is that's a big plus.
That's what I echo it seems horrible to put dollars on safety, but that is the reality as well. Right?
Well,
There are limits.
Mhm.
We know our limits in this district. We've learned lots in the last few years. There are limits, and it's a horrible conversation to have, right? It's weighing safety versus dollars.
Well,
But we're not going to give every child a bodyguard, right? Like there are
Yeah,
limits,
right.
and where those limits are is truly a valid discussion because.
But 2 years ago, our funding wouldn't have allowed us to have this kind of a conversation about whether we did it or not. It would be, all right, we didn't have the resources to be able to do that. But fortunately, we're in a better position to be able to at least have that discussion and determine, I think.
5, 7, 10 years from now, it may not again. So trying to make that funding last,
Sure.
trying to choose pathways now that if there are things like systems and locks and things that are one-time investments that aren't year-on-year investments, like always something that involves labor, paid labor, be it police officer, be it security guard, be it whatever, is going to end up being the most expensive option. And I'm not saying I'm against it in any way, but
Right.
it's truly a valid thing that it will be a bill that we have to pay year after year.
Whatever we do should be sustainable.
Right.
Yeah.
I like it.
Yeah.
Because I've been thinking a lot about that. This is just me, but I would love if there is a committed group of people who are passionate about this, or if our community tells us that they're passionate about this, that we have the opportunity to be a model for everyone around us, regionally, whatever. I think I've said a couple of times, sorry, I'm going to say it again, but like, the only thing more important than academic growth that's entrusted to us, like the only thing more important than reading and math in these buildings is physical safety. So I absolutely want to be a good steward of funds. We need to be very, very careful, look at all of our options. But if we can, even if it comes down to needing to do trade-offs or something, I'm willing to look at everything in regards to this area.
And our current SROs are coming from our police departments, is that correct? And
Correct.
So they were limited as to their resources for officers as well. Because SRO isn't exactly like, that's what I want to do when I grow up. I mean, this is like low end of the totem pole, right? Is that correct?
It depends. It just pretty much
We are.
more takes the right kind of person rather than inexperienced or experienced. That police officer, that security guard officer just has to have the right demeanor, has to have the right personality to be able to deal with kids,
Right.
small kids, teenagers, and be able to build relationships with them, but also there's boundaries
Right.
and so forth.
Because of the limitations of the police officers, we may have to look at other options too.
Yes, correct. And again, anything that we would go with our local police departments, they would have to hire additional staff.
Right.
They can't support what we're doing with their current staffing.
Right.
Even obviously if we fund it, they just don't have they don't have the number of people
Right.
to be able to do that. Because I think on any day, they maybe have only 2 or 3 officers on the road during the day. So if you're, for the whole community, each one of them, Bellbrook has maybe 2, and Sherwood Township has 2 or
But if
3.
we're taking some of those resources.
Right. If you have
It becomes a problem.
just hypothetically have a person in each building, that's 4 people.
That's 4
That's
people.
almost doubling their staff.
Right.
So that's a lot of not a lot to ask, but that's a lot to
Not very
add the
practical.
personnel
Right.
for them, and so they would have to hire additional staff to be able to staff those. Yep.
and I talked about this with the police chiefs, but I think it'd be prudent for us as board members to, in the way that's above board per sunshine law, discuss it with our counterparts on city council and the township trustees, and that we're in charge of educating and they're in charge of protecting, right? That's in their job jar. And how can we work together to maybe do some things creatively, to share some of our resources with them, while they share with us, to share funding opportunities. I know a number of our local elected officials have came out very strongly after that, the last incident in Texas. And what are we doing? We need to protect our kids. Okay, well, yeah, let's talk. Is this entirely our bill? Maybe it is, maybe it's not. Are there ways that we can, I mean, I'm talking about being really, I don't even remember it. I don't remember whose idea this was, but that districts are allowing, space in school buildings for officers to do their desk paperwork just within the building. So they're just in the buildings more often rather than going back to the station, doing their paperwork here in our buildings. So just small ways that provide more access, more presence, could potentially go a long way. But I'd like to open that dialogue with the township and the city. Because I know they've been very, a number of them have been very vocally supportive of improving security in our schools.
Good.
I think we should team with them to do so.
I think those conversations will continue. Thus far, they've been excellent. Chief Carmen, Chief Brown have been nothing but supportive and open and trying to be good problem solvers and good partners. Yeah, I've heard firsthand, if we stock a cushy room with Mountain Dew, I'm not gonna say donuts, but coming there for paperwork and just having the cruiser out front of Stephen Bell, there's definitely some outside the box things I think that we need to consider.
Yeah.
I don't think I'll get in trouble. You can tell me later if I do. But right now, the one school resource officer is kind of a shared cost between the township and us.
Correct.
Whether or not that can happen in the future, don't know. But at least right now, the one SRO is a shared cost.
And they're sharing. They have a bigger share of that.
All right.
So, how would the board like me to proceed? So I just want to review what I'm hearing here, just so that we're on the same page. Is that, if I misspeak, please let me know, that this is something that the board is interested in examining, looking into and exploring. And I'm also hearing the board that, again, Mrs. Dorn said this, of getting the councils involved or the trustees involved or the city manager or the township administrators involved in those conversations. Okay. All right, and I'd be more than happy to do that myself, and I'd have to see what the best method to do that, myself and a board member or something similar to that. That has just, my opinion, and maybe the board is fine with it, that is going to dramatically slow things down. If there's any type of meeting with other folks, people on vacation, if they need to discuss something at the city council, they only meet once a month and they meet at different times. And I'm fine with that. I just want to throw that out there, that's probably something that it's going to slow down a little bit. Just as you get more people involved and schedules involved and everything else, and then they got to go and talk to their folks and they got to make decisions. And I'm fine with that, but I just want to throw that out there, that is going to slow down whatever exploration it is. And if that's what we want to do, that is fine.
Well, hopefully that can just kind of be a reading of the room. And if the administrator and the city manager are open to it, finding out what options are. I mean, I'm not saying right now we need need a resolution passed by city council or anything to do, but, a meeting sooner rather than later, just to see what options are available and what's not. And if there are other options, I'm fully open to hearing.
Sure.
if there are.
Right. Yeah, and again, when I say slow down, if you're doing something at an official meeting, that kind of
Sure.
thing with a council or trustees, that's going to slow things down. A meeting with Mr. Tiffany or Mr. Stromer and the police chiefs, we can do that, much faster, much quicker if they can then. See if that's something they can at least do some groundwork on and see if that's something that they would want to explore. I can definitely work on that as soon as possible, that's for sure.
Yeah, let's do that.
Yeah. Again, I don't want to set any unreasonable timeline expectations because I don't know what they are, but
Right.
if we can hear something sooner rather than later, or even if we need to call a special meeting to discuss
Mhm.
school safety issues.
Okay.
I mean, I'm
Okay.
open to that.
I'm open to that.
Okay. Yeah. I'm just trying to be upfront of that, just
Sure.
going through
Oh,
my
right.
head of, okay,
Everything moves much slower than we would like.
as you get more people involved, it
Yeah.
does.
And I
But
realize
that's also
that-
how you make good decisions.
And because of, we can only act in an official meeting in a capacity, same for city council, same for the trustees.
Yep.
But, in the same way that, a small committee of local experts with, representative from each, if there is a board member, if there is a council member present, fine.
Yeah, those are
We don't
fine.
all, I think
Yeah.
this board, I speak for myself when I say I trust the other members of this board that any one of us could represent the board, not in an official capacity, but, I think we share a trust on this issue that bringing in a board member, bringing in a council member, having what's in the realm of possible discussions, and bringing back recommendations to the larger group is appropriate.
Work on that.
And if there's gonna be limitations as to personnel, like as an SRO, then definitely like hearing your thoughts about what direction to move. If it's not gonna be through the police department.
Right.
If we can hear those thoughts.
Sure, yeah. Again, from the last meeting, exploring a lot of options out there and trying to get a lot of,
Yeah. There are a lot.
creative situations or just not thinking one particular thing. But in the end, as Norm said it, just trying to be as quickly as possible to the bad situation going on that time. He's said in the past of
Mhm.
just, and having someone there and so forth. So,
Because so many lives are lost in those seconds.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Off the top of his head.
I've been in touch with national level subject matter experts as well as local subject matter experts from Green County, SWAT, and elsewhere. But really, with discussions like this, politics can come in, emotions can come in, and that's unfortunate because I'd like to leave all that at the door. What we need to talk about is time. It all comes down to time because it's uncomfortable and nobody wants to talk about it, but people have studied this unique problem. And there's an equation out there, and math doesn't lie, that for every minute that a mass casualty event occurs, there's between 6 and 12 deaths. It's usually heavier in the first few minutes and then a little bit less. So anything we can do to lessen that amount of time, or I would put it this way, is we need to discuss as a board what is an acceptable amount of time to us. And to me, just speaking personally, because we haven't had this discussion yet, 7 minutes, 12 minutes, 15 minutes waiting for our awesome law enforcement officers who are great and know what they're doing and are fantastic, but waiting for them to drive all the way from Walmart, because you guys are at Walmart a lot. I know that. I've been on a lot of ride-alongs, and I'm like, man, we're going back to Walmart. It's like, we're always going back to Walmart. No offense to Walmart. But, waiting
intended.
12 minutes for somebody to drive to Walmart, and you multiply that by 10 lives for every minute.
Yeah.
That's an unacceptable amount of time to me.
Yeah.
so I will continue work that I've already started,
Good.
exploring and so forth, but continuing that and see how quickly we can get people together and get things rolling. And then if need be, call a special meeting if that's where we're at. So our next meeting is August 11th? I think August 11th. August 11th, so that's the week before school. So yeah, I'm trying to be realistic with timelines too, but just try to move as quickly as possible on exploring, continue to explore the option. Okay.
Okay,
Thank you.
very good. Thank you so very much. Any other questions?
I guess, can I just say one more thing, just generally? And thank you to everybody's patience for this. I know that there's a lot of interest in this topic from a lot of different community members. We absolutely 100% believe in transparency. We want to be as open as possible. However, with sensitive discussions like this, there are some things that need to happen in executive session that are just a very, very small number of topics, and they're there for good reason. We can't broadcast codes to the security alarms. We can't make public record bank account numbers. Hypothetically, if there are deficiencies which we're discovering and addressing and improving to our already robust safety plans that have been around for years and years, that's not something we should broadcast.
Correct.
So thank you for your patience, and thank you for the discussions that have been going on privately, one-on-one with community members.
All right. All right, going on to open communication. Matt, can you get me the sheet, please, of signed in folks? Thank you, sir. First, we have Dr. Brinegar for school safety.
No formal or prepared marks. I'm kind of hanging tonight. So I don't know how my timing is going to be. Mostly, I want to say thank you. Thank you for the detailed presentation. I think this goes a long way toward answering questions. So I appreciate it, and I appreciate the layers. It's like Dr. Amy Atkins said, layers of Swiss cheese, right, for protecting us. No answer yet as far as whether they plan to arm staff or teachers. I know most districts are sort of announcing one way or another. I get the impression, no, that if it was, it would be additional SROs, but I would love to hear that at some point, some clarity on that issue. Off the cuff related to SROs, I feel torn. I think that having a presence, a close presence, makes sense to give us that time element. Some districts you worry about a heavy SRO presence. Do they start taking over for discipline and other things? And sometimes this is probably a bigger issue in schools that are more urban in nature, but sometimes I want to be mindful of that element. And also, I've asked before for an additional full-time mental health person. If I had to compare money, I don't know. I mean, I want to let's back up the time even further and have some more resources to help with some people who are struggling, whether it's for committing acts of violence or suicide too. Suicide is actually a much bigger risk than these events, even though these are devastating. One other thing, I've just been trying to learn more myself on what area districts are doing. I know one of the neighboring districts had, I think, a free assessment of their district done by the Department of Homeland Security. And, they came and found, I think some of the key points were they didn't have a visitor door management kind of system. So I like that idea. It sounds like that's what we're moving toward. I think they were also using keys in a lot of buildings, but that was sort of a big red flag. But there were good things. Parents were worried about, oh my gosh, some of these classrooms don't have doors. When we have these open schools are built. And they're actually, that's not as big of a concern. We're not. I think they're moving away from some of the lockdown, hunker down, and more get out. That's my understanding. So, I think some of these things, even the Alice models, I think, are starting to change. So I guess I don't know if that's a possibility for our school, if we have ever had that done. I'm guessing not, since some of the recommendations are just now starting. But whatever you get for the door management or the visitor system, I just ask that you implement it faithfully. I appreciate it when you guys did background checks for volunteers. I was never once asked. I know they know me, but even the first time I was do you need to see my card? And they were no. So I hope that you will use it faithfully. And I like the idea of updating in real time because, you may know me as I'm a Girl Scout leader, you think I'm good, but you may not know that a week ago, I got into a domestic dispute with my partner, and now my child has like, there's an order of protection that I can't come get my child. So I think that that is fantastic. So
And that's a
I appreciate that.
hypothetical case that you just
I
talked
got
about.
it, purely hypothetical, yeah.
Strike it from the
Yeah.
minutes.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. So what else? I mean, I always have lots of thoughts, but the one thing I will say is I don't know if you would ever want to use like PTOs or anything like this to kind of, let's say you have some projects in mind. I think parents would be willing to donate money if there was a specific thing. Alongside that, I saw you had the information about the state grants. I just got an email from DeWine's office this week, partly because I bug him, I bug other people more than just you to make change, right? But they were advertising. I do. But they were advertising just some of the state and federal grants that are out there for safety. And so I think you use some maybe for the radios, maybe not so much for the cameras, couldn't get it, but they're out there funding. So between grants and between parents donating, I know that's what Beaver Creek did, right? They had parents donate for door locks. Even though now they're saying maybe we shouldn't be using those. I mean, that's where the science kind of changes. But so that's just a suggestion that, I know I'd be willing, other parents might be willing to donate for these projects. So,
All right.
So thank you.
Thank you.
I went over my 3 minutes. Thank you.
Next, Mike Bergman for COVID safety.
Morning, board. Dr. Kozak. Yeah, so I'm Mike Bergman. I have an incoming 8th grader and a 5th grader this year. I met with you guys. I've gotten up and talked a few times over the years, but last year I got up and talked leading up to the school year. Of course, it was quite an audience about school safety with COVID. We did pull our kids out of the school district and open enrolled into another school district. I guess I just wanted to reflect a little bit on that. I came to the school board and said that we should listen to the experts. The whole list of experts that we have in the science that they were all recommending you need to mask, and they had the chart for everybody masks. Not worry about quarantines, notifications, contact tracing. If you don't mask, this huge tree, the nightmare tree of actions we have to take. So we went over to a school district that was full masking. And really, I just wanted my kids in school. My wife and I work full time. It's challenging. We didn't want to have the quarantine. And I'll say that school district, maybe I think even went overboard with the COVID safety. To be in chorus class, you had to wear an N95 mask. That's above and beyond what I would have said. But okay, that's what they did. For open houses prior to the school year starting, they had it outside. The teachers had their tables around the outside of the school. The parents came up, and it's all these little things that you can do. You go up to the school. It's an old school, but all the windows are open. They have a $10 box fan from Walmart. Turned on, blowing outward. The doors are open to each classroom. For $200, you can equip the school with good, poor man's version of good ventilation. So it's all these little things that help. We never got a phone call contact tracing. The administrators didn't have to. I'd prefer that all of you and all the teachers and administrators, school building administrators spend their time on safety and educating our kids, worrying about the curriculum, not worrying about all the COVID tracing. So I think I think when I left last time, I said, why are we doing it this way? It's for freedom and it's for the vocal. I think the survey showed that was a minority. I think the survey said 60% of parents wanted their kids masked. So in any event, I think maybe just reflecting on what happened last year, with Omicron and then having to shut down school with the staffing issues, that school didn't have any of those problems. We never shut down. My kids were always in school. So that's what we were looking for. That's what we got. Now we're coming back, mostly because of transportation. So I understand all the busing issues you guys have had complaints about. I finally understand that. We look forward to the buses. But now, I'm wearing a mask now. This past weekend or on Monday, Greene County is now one of the 5 counties in Ohio that's rated high. They now recommend masks are worn indoors. Hey, again, I'm not an expert. Those are the experts. I'll listen to the experts. So I think, again, I appreciate all this safety stuff. I echo the other parents that this is a great layered approach, A+. But also, we we have a plan in place? Have we thought about it? You know, maybe, you know, if COVID's over, we're all done with it, we're all tired, masks, who cares? You know, do we have a plan in place? You know, this next spike, we don't know how high it's gonna rise. We weren't aware of Omicron prior to the last school year. So, I haven't heard much or discussion. Yeah, not society right now, I understand that, but, I just thought, I'd bring that up as a topic. I was also gonna say something about the safety, but you guys covered everything. I thought was fantastic, so thank you. But, yeah, I just, thought, I haven't heard anything. Yeah, we'll see. Okay, thanks.
All right. Thank you, Mike. Megan Naveau, also talking about school safety.
Thanks, everybody. I'm Megan Naveau. My remarks are also off the cuff, but I believe they're very short. Just thank you for the transparency and all the details. Dr. Coe's out everything you walked through. I know in the last session, I think Mrs. Anderson mentioned we have layer upon layer, and so to have an idea of what some of those layers are is really helpful. I love the idea of the additional school resource officers and the creativity and what do we do, how do we look at that? So just thank you for being willing to explore different options. I had 2 quick questions. I know the visitor management system you mentioned, like parents coming in to have lunch with their kids, kind of those one-off things. I'm wondering, even like for bigger events held during the school day, I assume that system would still be in place. I'm thinking like kindergarten celebration, when everybody, there's a huge group of people, and perhaps that takes more time, but I'm assuming, I would just like clarification that includes everybody who's coming in and out. And is that also for events after the school day is over, or is that just for the school day period? And then the other question I had was just, will that PowerPoint be available to parents somehow, or how do we help communicate all that great stuff we just talked to with everybody who's either not watching the board meeting or checking in? So, thank you.
Is it possible to have some version, some list of this PowerPoint perhaps posted somewhere?
Yeah, that seems very reasonable to do.
Remind message and just post it on the website.
Thank you.
And I would,
But then it's visitor management. Obviously, that's gonna be new for every parent, so information will be pushed out about not only how that works, when it's expected, but what it does, what it checks for. I assume it's easy to push out because everyone's gonna be super confused the first time they come.
Yep.
sure.
Working on that document right now. Yeah, we're working on that document, and all those intricacies in this group, that group, this group.
And is it just during the school day or for those after school events also?
It is not for after school events.
And I would even say, like, for kindergarten celebration, like you said, it would kind of depend where they're going in the building. Like, I know for kindergarten celebration, you went directly in the front door and into the gym area, and everything else was locked. So you could not go anywhere else in that building. So I would say, like, for big events like that, it probably is not going to be used. But maybe Dr. Kozak can talk more about that.
It's probably going to lean that way, right? Again, you got to balance do they have access to the rest of the building, and also if there's going to be 300 people trying to do all of that within a few minutes, it's going to be really challenging. Right. So, again, we're working on all those details, working with administrators. We're just working on it today, trying to revamp all of that, make sure that we have all those different buckets of people and who gets the visitor management system, who gets the background check, who does, what are all those little intricacies.
I think whenever there is a school event, it's just gonna be important to publicize what the requirement,
What the
what does it take
requirements.
to get in?
Mhm.
You need a ticket, you need a
Right.
swipe, do you need a bib, do you need
Right.
It's going to be a learning curve at the beginning.
Sure.
Just give
Yeah,
us
the
an
more we can
indication.
share about that, the better.
Yeah.
The better off we'll be.
That can be publicly,
Sorry.
that can be publicly distributed.
Yep.
Maybe we can have it, prominently
And just-
posted at the doors. I'm sure
Yeah.
there's lots of little things that we'll figure out as we go through some growing pains.
Have your driver's license ready.
Yeah. It's just don't
And-
be offended if you're asked multiple times.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I think where you draw the line between a big event and, where's that line go? Part of me says, if this is a quick enough response, I'd go keep it all the time. But so there are things that we have to work through, for sure.
Right.
Thank you, Megan. And Mike and Meredith, thank you all. All right. Going on to the superintendent's report, sections 8A and 8B and 8C are part of our consent agenda for this evening, and that does include the hand carry the addition of 8B1 addition, and that's not on the projected, the additional side. So would you speak to that?
Sure. So recommend approval of the following support staff for the Summer Advantage program that starts next week, 2022. So those folks there are special needs assistants for the Summer Advantage reading program. Claudia Barinholtz, Laura Lake, Kelly Newland, Cynthia Pettit, Angela Stewart, Jeanette Tapia, Eva Wasty. We get July 18th to the 4th.
All right, thank you.
Again, that's paid out of ESSER funds, our Summer Advantage program we've expanded this summer, and that is all paid out of ESSER funds along with transportation, which we've never done for a Summer Advantage summer school before, is provide transportation. So
Nice.
Again, that's out of ESSER funds.
Okay,
It's no cost to the taxpayer.
No cost to the local taxpayer. To the local taxpayer.
just making it clear.
We have probably about 60 or so students K to 3. So
And that's housed at Stephen Bell.
that's housed at Stephen Bell starting next Monday.
All right, before we get too far in the
I'm
discussion,
Yeah,
that's okay. Is there anything that board members want to have segregated out from the consent agenda for us to speak to individually? In 8A, 8B, and 8C. All right, do we have a motion to approve our consent agenda of items 8A, 8B, and 8C inclusive?
So moved.
Mrs. Dorn?
Second.
Mr. Kinsey? Okay, now. Any other questions or comments?
No,
All
I
right.
already said.
All right, very good. No, I appreciate you making that because the public wasn't privy to that part of the agenda. All right, no questions or additional comments. Mr. Liming, please call the roll.
Mr. Kinsey,
Yes.
Mrs. Anderson,
Yes.
Mr. Carpenter,
Yes,
Mrs. Dorn.
Yes.
motion passes. So back to you, Dr. Cozad, for 8D.
Yep, so summer 2022 athletic camp, another athletic camp, so high school girls soccer. Grades 9 to 12 camp current in Oregania, the 4th and 5th, and overnight, so team building, and the girls soccer coaches or supervisors, and cost of student athletes.
All right, do we have a motion?
So moved.
Mrs. Anderson,
Second.
Mrs. Dorn, questions or comments? All right, Mr. Liming, please call the roll.
Mrs. Anderson,
Yes.
Mr. Carpenter,
Yes,
Mrs. Dorn,
Yes.
Mr. Kinsey.
Yes.
motion passes. Then,
Over to the hand carry again, E, payment in lieu of transportation, so recommend approval for payment in lieu of transportation services for students attending area non-public private schools for the 22-23 school year due to the impracticality of providing school district transportation. Again, this is pretty much the same list as previous school years. Alder High School all the way to Xenia Summit Academy.
yeah, can we scroll down?
Is it on
Oh, that's on the hand, it's the
It's on the
hand
hand
carrier.
carrier.
Sorry.
Would you like me to read all of them? Okay.
Backwards.
I don't think we really need to be list. It's the public and private schools
Yep.
in our, or non-public and private schools in our area.
You meant all the students' names.
Yeah, no, not the student names either, so thank you. All right, do we have a motion?
So moved.
Mrs. Dorn,
Second.
Mrs. Anderson. Questions or comments?
And we're required by law to do this, right?
Right. And it's something we've done for years. It's actually a cost-saving opportunity for us because otherwise we'd be shuttling students miles and miles.
Yeah, sometimes
So-
there's only a handful of students, and to be able to provide a bus to all of these different schools would not be practical.
Yeah.
Right.
And but also we wouldn't be able to find the bus drivers for us.
Right.
Okay. Any other questions, comments? All right, Mr. Lyman, please call the roll.
Mr. Carpenter,
Yes,
Mrs. Dorn,
Yes.
Mr. Kinsey,
Yes.
Mrs. Anderson.
Yes.
motion passes. Okay, items of information and discussion. Any topics?
I just had one quick thing. real quick.
Okay,
The OSBA, which is Ohio School Board Association, has a capital conference in November.
yes.
And they take, individual board members can nominate student achievement
Mhm.
groups. I was fortunate enough to nominate supportive peers for that, and they
Nice.
were accepted. So they will be presenting a feature at the OSBA conference in November.
Excellent.
So I will forward that information to Dr. Kozak.
Okay,
Excellent.
sounds good. Thank you.
Yeah, for the Student Achievement Center, for those unfamiliar, one of the big conference halls over at Columbus Convention Center then has booths, the standard, I think, 8x8 booth that's, and probably half, not even half of the school districts, yeah, probably just 100 or 200 the schools have booths for their student achievement. It's really fascinating to walk through there and see some of the things that are happening in school districts around the state. So, yeah.
Sounds good.
All right, anything else? Then do we have a motion for adjournment?
So moved.
Mrs. Dorn,
Second.
Mrs. Anderson. No debate. Please, Mr. Liming, please call the roll.
Mr. Kinsey,
Yes.
Mrs. Anderson,
Yes.
Mr. Carpenter,
Yes,
Mrs. Dorn.
Yes.
motion passes. We are adjourned at 8:11. Thank you all for coming.